Hi there and welcome to today's art class. We are painting this gorgeous colourful birdie today. He is a bay-headed tanager. Never heard of that before. But anyway, I just liked him because he was nice and bright. He's a lovely colour. And I think it'll be a fun one to do for our final online class for this little course that we're doing at the moment. So what I'm going to do now is switch over to my other camera so you can see what's happening here on my desk, and then we can get cracking. So bear with me while I share my screen.
Yeah, well, it's fine.
Hey? Oh,
I might just mute everyone. So if you have any questions or you want to tell me to slow down or anything like that, please do. Don't be afraid to interrupt. Okay, that's what we're here for. This is hopefully an interactive class that everyone can contribute to. So I would really like it if you would tell me what you're thinking or feeling, or if you need me to stop for a minute, or whatever you need. Okay, here we are. Here's our little birdie. And as you know, if you've done my classes before, we'll be doing a charcoal version first in black and white. We'll be referring back to this picture with the grid lines on it to help us with the drawing. And then we'll go back to the charcoal to look at the tones, because the tones are so important in here. Why we do charcoal is because it really gets us into art mode. It's a nice way to relax, gets familiar with the drawing, so we end up doing it twice in the class, which is not a bad thing, because if you muck it up the first time round, then you know what you need to do better next time round. And it just, it helps us to find shapes, tone, and all those lovely things that make a painting more interesting. All right, so let's get started. What we need is some white drawing paper. This picture is in portrait mode today. So if you want to fill up the whole page or do something, the same size, then you'll need to put your paper down in portrait. Okay, now I'm just going to very lightly tape a couple of corners down just so I don't have to hang on to it and it doesn't move around too much. If you've got an art diary or a pad or something, you probably won't need to do that because it's fairly weighty. But if it's just a piece of paper, it's good just to tape it on so it can't move around. That way you've got a free hand to do whatever you need to do. Awesome. So first off, we're going to loosely draw in the shape of our page. So this is called a thumbnail, even though it's much bigger than a thumbnail. But little thumbnails are really good too when you're trying to work out your composition and where things want to sit within your painting. But it's good to do little sketches before you go on to the final one, because it's just nice to, I don't know, examine those things, I guess. Okay, so I've drawn my area like this. As I said, you can do a whole page if you want to. You can do a smaller part if you want to, whatever you like. So it's slightly bigger than the actual picture, what I've drawn here. And then we want to find our halfway marks. So this is our grid line. The grid line is going to help us to draw the bird in the right proportions. So find your halfway line down the middle and draw a line across like that. And then find your halfway mark on the other ends. Everyone's will be different sizes depending on how big your rectangle is. So that's my grid line. I'm just going to adjust my lights a bit because I think that one's too bright. There we go, that's better. That's my grid line there. And I'm going to be drawing according to that to get the birdie in all the right spots. I'll just move all this over for a sec so you can see what we're doing on the screen. So here he is. And you can see there's very distinct shapes around the bird. So, getting those shapes in will be fairly straightforward because there's no tiny details really. And then we've got the branch. So we've got the shape of the bird, his beak, comes around here, his feet and legs, and then on the branch. There's another bit of branch over here, up to you whether you put that in or not. So this is where you get to be a bit creative. You can think about maybe there's a few leaves wandering around in the background and that kind of thing. Anyway, let's get started. So we can start up here in the left-hand quarter. And what I'm going to do is look at here and see where the bird intersects the line. And I would say that's about 1/3 of the way in. If you just measure, it's about 1/3 of the way across this line. So then you can put a little point about there. Let's say that's about 1/3. If you want to measure it and get it perfectly right, you can. But for this part of the class, I like to just keep it sort of loose. All right, so measure to there, and then we can look at where the top of the head intersects. And again, I reckon that's about 1/3, maybe slightly less than 1/3 at the top. So let's go, that's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, a little bit higher. So I'm just doing this by eye, but if you need to measure, feel free to do that. You know, you might feel happier to measure it all out properly. Some people like to be exact. I'm a bit of a, see how you go kind of girl. All right, now let's have a look at what the shape of the edge here. So what we're looking at is this curve. Don't worry about colors and eyes and stuff. We're just looking at the outline and the fluffy bits, but we'll put those in later. So it's quite a beautiful curve, isn't it, going around there? So we can look here and see how far from the edge does this little chest come to? Because where we've intersected on this line, it's got to come slightly over to the left a little bit because it curves around. So you can put a little marker there. And if you want to put other markers in, you can. So you could potentially look at where is it halfway? Where's halfway on here? So use my ruler just for a second. So 5 is, so 2.5 is halfway. So what intersects at 2.5? It's right there, that bit there. So then I can say, all right, that's halfway about there. What I'm doing is putting dots on there that I can just join, basically. We're going to join the dots now. Okay, so now I can bring that line around here, just noticing the subtle changes in the shape, but just loosely bringing a curve around like that. We can do the detail later. Okay, so that's the outline of that side of the bird. If you want to pop his eye in, it's a good time to figure out where the eye is. So it's about, I don't know, about there-ish. We'll say it's about there for now. So that's probably all we need to get in for that section at this stage. We'll do the outline first and then we'll look at some of the detail. So now we've got to come over to the right side and there's a little bit more shape in here. The other thing that's really handy to think about is to look at your negative space. So that's the space around the bird. Sometimes it's easier to draw that shape than it is to draw this shape. So see what your brain wants to do. Everybody's different, but try it because sometimes it changes how you look at it. It's actually no longer a bird, it's just a shape. So this shape here, the green area. Okay, let's have a look at this and see how far in does the head come before it gets to the beak. So I reckon about that far down, about there. And then we can work out how far in is the beak. So I'd say the beak, I just do this little measuring thing with my fingers. Yes, not 1/3, but it's not a halfway either. It's kind of 2/3 of halfway. So let me see, that's halfway. I'm going to put it at about there-ish. So just use your fingers or a ruler or whatever you want to use to get those little measurements in. Okay. Then we've got, so we'll just join the dots as you go if you wish. And then we look at the beak, it's got a little arch on it. So it's got this little soft little curve on the top. All right. And then we can come down and we can look at where the beak, it just comes down like this. And it's also got a little curve. And then it kind of joins up with the rest of the head. So if you could draw a line from where the head meets the beak at the top there, just draw it as if you were continuing that line down, and then it comes down through here. So now we can look at the beak and we can do a shape like that. And I know the beak goes in further, so if you want to, you can then continue that line across, and it goes nearly to the halfway mark, doesn't it? So looking at the shape of that beak, it's got that little nostril space on the top, and it's got a line through there where the two beaks join, something like that. So just noticing all those shapes and lines and things. It's quite crooked, Jean. A bit straighter, I think. Cool. All right. Once we've got that in place, and then we come down here and we do his little chin under the beak, and then we're going to come across and we're going to just draw this line here. So that's the wing at the back, the yellow area. So again, let's have a look at where that intersects down here. So I'd say it's not quite halfway. It's just a bit short of halfway. So that's half, be about here, I think. And that line starts just up behind the chin area there. So it starts at about there. And then we can just draw that down through there. It's not completely straight. It's got a slight curve to it. So that's the outline of the bird in that section there. Cool, cool. Cool, cool, cool. All right, cool. We'll come back to that later, the detail. So we can now move down into the bottom right-hand quarter and continue this line down. So he's got a tail back there that's a little bit fuzzy and off in the distance. Let's just focus on this bright bit that you can see that's quite clear at this stage. We can pop that in after. So this bit comes down, how far down? Probably a third of the way down. So I'm going to go about to there. And how far in? Maybe a quarter. So slightly over a little bit. About there. Put a little spot there. And then just draw your line down to there. So that's that wing area there. And then it comes across, and if you look at the bright green section, it sort of comes across like this. I'll just give you a little sketch so you know what I'm looking at. That bit there, it's the end of the wing. So it sits just there. So we need to get that line in here. Just need to rub some of that out for a minute. Kneadable eraser is your friend. Cool. And then we're going to come down and do this little leg. I find legs the trickiest part of doing a bird. Oh, and you can softly put that little bit of tail back in there too, if you wish. Just mark that in nice and light. Then we've got to come down and look at the leg, but I'm just looking at the shape of that. So if you look at where it begins under the wing there, where is that? It's pretty much halfway across, so about here. Right there. And then I know it's not a straight line, but that line of the bottom of the bird all the way down to the leg on the branch is, you know, going in the same direction. So maybe we can draw that in. We've got to work out where it intersects on this line. So it's just short of halfway, about there. So then we can kind of just join those dots and we'll put the other stuff in afterwards. So that's this bit here. And then it goes a bit of a bump, and then we're down to a bit further actually. Bump there. And then we're down to the halfway line. And you can also see the outside edge of that. So I've done the outside, we just need to do the inside now. Little bump there, and thicken up there, and because it's got this little interesting shape in here. See that negative space in there where the little leg is under its belly? So that's like a funny little triangle-ish shape. Not really a triangle, but anyway, something like that. while you're here, if you want to put this side branch in, you can just mark in where that's going to go. Like there-ish, if you want to use it. You can decide not to later if you want to. All right. And now we've got to move over to this one. So this has got a lot of information in it, but we'll get the main shapes in first. So I'm just looking at the branch. We might pop that in, hey? Then we can put the legs and stuff on top. So it starts back up here where we began, intersects about here, and then it intersects over here. So draw a line down through there like that. Doesn't have to be perfectly straight because branches are natural. So I want to draw that line down through there and then work out the other side of the branch and where that intersects on the grid lines. So I reckon about there, and then little bumps down through there. So that's our branch. That's where that's got to go. All right. And then we can continue this leg over here now, because once you've got your branch in there, you can pop his foot on it. So if you look at that, look at again the negative space here. See this little area here between the branch and the foot underneath? That's a really good little shape to kind of look at and work out what needs to happen in here. So if you look at that negative space, see if you can draw that shape instead of the actual foot. Sometimes that's easier, which is what I did up here too. Under the belly where the leg comes out, there's a little shape there. Mine's a bit off, but you know. So we're going to go up more. So there's lots of different ways you can check your shapes. Once you've got this shape in here, then we can move over to the other side of the leg and put the rest of the detail in there. So we can come down and it kind of fans out a little bit when it hits the branch because we've got those claws then that are hanging onto it. So then, again, there's this negative space here under the belly of the bird. So that's a really good shape to look at as well. So we can kind of pull our line up through here, work out where, we'll just draw the line of the belly first. We'll get that in and then we can look at the feet. So that's his little belly. And then the other leg or foot is up here at the very top. And we can't see much leg. It's mostly just foot that one. But that sort of goes like this. And again, negative space around it is a really good way to find. Lovely. Then we've got to put the feet on the branch. This is the tricky bit. I always struggle with these feet. But anyway, we'll have another go at it. Practice, practice, practice. So looking at the lines of the feet, this back one, we've got one claw that goes like that. Then there's another one, and it's all about light and dark, isn't it? If you look at that back claw, there's a beautiful bit of light sitting on the top of it, and then it's dark to the sides. And the same with that little one at the back there. So that's what's going to give you the 3D or the solid look, you know, is the light. It's all about the light that tells the story. And this is fuzzy too, because it's off, it's further away from us. We can't really see very well what's happening there because it's gone a bit blurry. Whereas this foot here in the foreground is much sharper. So unless that's my eyes, but this to me looks pretty fuzzy. This one's sharper. So, and things like that are worth noticing as well, because when you're doing these kinds of paintings, you do want to put in those different things, because that way you decide where the attention goes in your picture. Just drawing in what I think are claws over on this side now. So potentially you could decide what do I want in this picture to be the most eye-catching? You know, what's the story here? Do I want to focus on if you want to focus on the feet, you can make those a highlight or a focal point. or is it the eye? It's usually the eye with animals. It's usually the first place we go. Look at the eye, and then you kind of wander around the animal's body. So need to decide where you want the attention to go to. All righty. So hopefully everybody's got their feet and claws and branches and stuff in there. And now we can start to look at tone and shapes. So it looks a bit strange like this, doesn't it? And it doesn't come alive until we start to give it light and dark. That's the secret. So now, once you've got your drawing in there, we can now come back and look at this black and white version. And we're just going to put some tone in here with charcoal. Don't worry about the background at this point. We'll do that for the next color version. But we're just going to look at the bird and work out where it's light, where it's dark, and where it's mid-tone, because that's going to determine the colors we choose to paint him in pastel. So let's have a look at this, and let's grab a shorter piece of charcoal if you have one. So I like these little fat sticks for when I want to fill in larger areas, and then I like these ones for drawing and doing finer work. So, oh, and I found my other blender. This is an Art Spectrum brand, and it's got a little rubber tip on it. So I've only got that one in this brand, and it seems to be good enough for pretty much everything I want. So it comes in handy when I want to get into those tiny little corners where my fingers won't fit. So I'll probably use that again later. So what we're going to do now is get your short fat piece of charcoal, and we're going to fill in where it's dark. Okay, so it's dark through here, and just lie it flat on the page, right? So don't use the end of it, lie it down flat. This is why you need it to be short, so it's not too clunky to use. And just pull it around to get that beautiful dark tone. And the head is dark, so I'm going to darken the head off. Doesn't matter if you lose the eye, we'll put that back in after. And the shape of that head, the edge of it, so where does the edge come to? I'm just going to use my other bit now, other charcoal piece, just to get that edge between those, the top of the head and the other feathers, which is red and yellow in the color version. And again, just filling this in, I want it to be nice and dark, because you can't have light without dark. And when we need to put light in there in a couple of spots, we'll be able to use the eraser to do that. So darkening off in there. And then under the belly. So we'll just do the big areas to start with. So this is blocking in. We're just blocking in all these dark areas. So the belly is really dark. If you squint at the black and white picture through your eyelashes, you can see that it's quite dark under there. So don't be afraid to go fairly dark in there. Again, that'll help the light to shine. And then the rest of the bird is fairly mid-tone, so you can just press lightly now to get a bit of a mid-tone coverage there, because we need to get some charcoal on the page so that we can have a bit of play with it and get the lights in and get the darks in and that kind of thing. And you can see that mid-tone kind of curls around here. The tail, the back of that tail is quite light, but it's got little creases in it. So we'll come back to that in a sec. I just want to fill in the big areas first, and then we'll come back and look at the detail. So I've gone a little bit lighter up in this area here. So the front of the tummy is much lighter than underneath. So I haven't pressed as hard in that section. And then I can come back down in here and press a bit harder. I'm using willow charcoal, which is very soft, so it doesn't get very black. If you want really black charcoal, get the pencils, because you can get some really beautiful deep blacks with the pencils. But the willow is quite soft, so it doesn't get that dark. But it's good enough for this exercise. So once you've got that happening on there, And you can see already that just by pulling this charcoal around here on the chest of the birdie, it's already starting to get a little bit of texture. Might look slightly feathery with any luck. But because I'm a crazy blender, I just want to push some of this in, smooth it out a bit. And pushing it in so I can get some off, if that makes sense. Push it in around the head area. So all the different tones help to give us the direction of the bird. So when we put the shadow in, so you can see here under the chin, I need a bit more dark down through there because that's going to tell me he's turning his head. So we've got to emphasize that a bit more. And I want to get much darker right under that beak. It's super dark. Pressing harder with the charcoal. It's not going to go much darker. So maybe I can lighten up what's around it and try to get the effect that way. And notice too, at the back of the here where the chin is under the beak, that little bit of white feather at the back there, that's the highlight. So that's where the light and the dark meet. Okay, so that gives us a highlight area, but it also tells us what he's doing or how his posture is. All right. Now I'm going to pick up my smaller, thinner stick of charcoal now because I want to start using the tip of it to do a bit more detail. Okay, we've got all the charcoal on the birdie, so now we've got something to work with. You've always got to get something down to work with first. So let's have a look at this tail. We've got this blurry bit here that I put in earlier, and you can just soften that off with your fingers if you want to push it off into the distance. So when things are further away, they're always blurred. They're softer and they're blurred. And I'm just going to put a few little, see those dark lines just here at the bottom of the feathers? So I'm just going to put a couple of dark lines through there. And then we've got other little fine lines that kind of come out and they go all the way up through there. Little soft lines that tell us that they're the wing feathers. So you can just mark those in lightly with your stick of charcoal. You might have to find like a bit of a sharp edge on the charcoal to do that. Just to get a bit of that detail in there. And then I'm just going to smush it with just dab it. Don't rub it, but just dab with your fingers. That just softens off those marks. If you want something to be really prominent and strong, then come back over and darken it off and leave it without blending or smudging. But when you want things to kind of get softer, you can pop your fingers in there and just dab. Always start off dabbing lightly, and then if you need to go harder or whatever, you can. So while I've got this in my hand, this long stick, I'm just going to make a few feathery kind of shapes like this. So sort of little U shapes. Just suggesting them. See that through the feathers there? I just want to suggest some little U shapes that might tell me that there's some feathers there layering on top of each other. And they're interesting little shapes because what's happening here on the back are these U shapes. And then we've got some nice little upside down U shapes down here. As you go into that light section where we've just been putting those marks, there's really soft little feathery U shapes through here. So I like to find shapes that helps my brain to kind of draw it if I know it's a U or a V or whatever. But just gentle. We don't have to put too much detail in there. And we'll come back with the eraser soon and put some lights back in. But just marking, running around the body of this little fella. And then when we get over here onto this lighter section of his chest, you can see that it's more soft little feathers, little fluffy feathers that do that. So if you do some little marks like that with your charcoal, and then we'll do some more afterwards with the eraser, it'll just help to give us the feeling and the texture of this little guy. And look at the direction of these feathers on his chest. They kind of go straight up and down in the middle, and then either side they fan out a little bit, so they change direction. So just change direction with your charcoal when you're drawing them in. I'm literally just flicking little marks like this on the page. Okay, it's not, I'm not holding the charcoal like I would a pen. So if you hold it with a pen, you don't have as much movement in your hand, and it's quite, you know, structured. Whereas if you hold it at the end and just let it do its thing, it's got a lot more movement and you get a more organic mark. So just be aware of how you hold your charcoal as well. So just do these little flicky marks through here. Let the charcoal kind of dance across the page and be a bit loose. You can get to the edges and fluff them up a little bit if you want to. Just get some little fluffy marks right on the edges around, especially on that left hand, our left hand side. There's a fair bit of fluffiness on the edges there. So that just helps to, you know, indicate that this guy's got some texture and feathers. Lovely. Now I'm just going to come up and look at under this beak area. I want to get that much darker so I can get the light behind it to really pop. So I'm just going to darken that off a bit more in there with this stick. And then start to look at the detail in the head. So you can see where the eye is. It's about here. We need to darken that as well, because it's got to be darker than the feathers. Okay, and leave the top of it kind of unfilled. So draw a little circle and then just fill in maybe the bottom half. So it's starting to have a shine, and then we'll put the white in there after. It's got a little line from the eye back to the back of the head there. So that dark shape through there, just through from the back of the eye. It's also fairly dark where the head and the beak meet at the top. So you can darken off that. And don't forget to look at the shape of that. So it's got a little, almost like an S shape on the top of the beak there. And I'm just going to shade in a little bit darker here. So again, just pressing harder with the charcoal. That's what will get it to be nice and dark. See how that really helps to give it texture and tone, and you can see where you need to add your dark just to get that beautiful form happening. You can do a few little feathery marks on his face. And then we're going to look at the beak. So the beak is really light on the top, and then it gets dark at the side here. So I'm just going to mark in where it gets darker as it comes around. And then we've got the little line between the top of the beak and the bottom of the beak. So the bottom part is dark-ish. So it's got a few tones in there, hasn't it? And then as it comes in towards the face, it gets a little bit lighter around here where the face and the beak meet. But there is, can you see there's a light line where the two beaks meet, top and bottom beaks meet? There's a little line just there. How are we going to do that? Let's see if we can make that work with our kneadable eraser. So I've got that in my hand and I'm squeezing an edge. I want to get a really sharp knife edge here that I can just draw a line with. So squeeze the edge. Make sure it's fairly solid. You need a decent amount of it to hang on to. I'm just going to put it here and do that. Ah, that worked all right. So you put it on the where you want to have that light mark and just do a little draw and then lift up. Cool. So that worked pretty well, I think. Beautiful. And just wander around the bird now with this stick of charcoal and darken off wherever you see it needs to be darker. So I reckon under the belly needs to be a bit darker. Just do the top of the leg while I'm here. So up through there. More dark over here. He's coming alive, isn't he? Getting there. I'm going to rub out my outline just around this feather area because I want it to be soft, not a hard line. And it'll kind of disappear into the background because it's light. I'll just make it a very light shade of grey. There we go. So that just softens off that outline. And now we've got to look at, remember we talked about this light section under the chin and the back of the feathers, wing. We need to get that lovely and light in there. So I'm just going to use the eraser again and try and lighten up that part there without losing all my marks. And if I do, I can come back and put them in. I just want to get that nice and bright through there. The light is obviously top right because you can see where it's hitting on the beak and the top of the head and this section here. So just going to change that angle a little bit. Sometimes these willow charcoals don't want to work. They get a bit scratchy. So they can be, you know, a little bit unpredictable sometimes. There we go. So I know we can't see that light terribly well because we're on white paper, but it's just good practice to notice where that is. And a little bit of dark just here in that section there next to the light. So if you want to create a drama in your art and a focal point, put light next to dark. That's key. Now let's have a look at the head. So I'm okay with the beak. I think I might just leave it like that. It'll do like that. And up on the top of the head, this area here is a little bit lighter, isn't it, than the rest? So I'm just going to dab that with my fingers and see if I can lighten that off a little bit better because the light is catching on the bird. And can you see a crease there just on the top where the beak goes up into the head? It's like a little crease. I'll just draw a line where I'm talking about. So that's got to be where the shape of the head. So I just drew a little crease in there, like a line through there. And then on the left side of it, it's a bit lighter, isn't it? So you've got to notice all these little things. Quite light on the top. I'm just going to get my eraser and dab now. Just do some little dabs. So you can use your eraser just like you would your charcoal or pastel. You can dab it, rub it, do all sorts of stuff with it. Pretty cool. Very, very handy, especially with charcoal. All right. I think that looks okay. Now, where's the eye? Is the eye too high or it is a bit too high. I need to bring that down a bit. So just check where everything sits. To find out, you can even do things like grab your ruler and get your picture and line it up so you can say, okay, the eye lines up with the beak, where the point on the beak is, I think. You see the bottom of the eye. No, not really. No, it doesn't. What does the eye line up with? That white area on the beak. So if I put this back here, this is my white area. So the bottom of the eye, oh yeah, got it in about the right place. Lines up with this white section. So use things like that to measure where things go. If you've lost, you know, something in the drawing, often you can't see the drawing because you fill it all up and then you can't work out where the eye's got to sit. But you can actually refer to the image itself and go, well, the bottom of the eye matches that, and the top of the eye is level with the top of the beak. So I can make sure that it's the same right size, and then you can, you know, work out where it's got to sit. Ruby, let's put the light in the eye because that's the fun bit. And we'll put some light down here on these back feathers. around the neck area, and then we'll go down to the feet. So I'm going to do a little dot point now. I want to make a point with my eraser. Don't make it too fine or it won't work because it'll be too weak, bendy. So make it fairly strong. So not long, but just a good point, because what we're going to do is just dab that on the eye area to get the light in there. Okay, might do it a couple of times. So I've just got a little point. I'm going to dab it on here, and it should lift off some of the charcoal and lighten up in there. So you might have to do it a few times, and when you do it, you need to get a clean edge on your eraser again. Otherwise, you just put charcoal back on your paper. So I'm just dabbing that to lighten that up. And now I've lost the edge of the eye, so I'm going to come back in now, darken that around here. There we go, that's better. So see how that little bit of light just brings the life back into it, doesn't it? Amazing. And then when you're ready, you can, again, get your eraser, make a knife edge with it. So change the shape now. We're not dabbing. We're going to draw little feathery marks with it in lines. So we need a knife edge like this. And then I'm just going to draw little lines through here. I want to lighten up all this area through here because it's a bit too dark. Okay. This light feather back here needs to be quite light because against the color of the head or the tone of the head, it looks very bright. So you might end up rubbing a fair bit of your charcoal off. That's okay. It's important to get those tones right. Keep kneading the eraser and finding a clean edge, and then you can keep going. So you'll find what works for you, but just make sure you don't have a floppy piece because it won't do what you want it to do. So you're literally drawing with the eraser to get the lights back in. Little feathery marks. Lovely, 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 lovely. Fluff, fluff, fluff. Something like that. And then we'll move on to the feet. So I'm just going to lighten up this back area here as well because that needs to be much lighter through there. And it's it starts light around here at the back, and then as it moves around to the front, it changes tones. So see if you can get that to happen kind of gradually. And as I said, it's a bit harder to see on the white paper. We'll have more fun with it with the pastel. A few more feathery marks through there. So now it's looking quite feathery and soft and birdish. So I think that's okay for now. All right, so let's get onto these tricky little feet. We'll put the branch in first. So you can see the branch is quite light up here at the top on that top left area. Then as we come down, we've got texture. So I'm just going to shade in some of this. It doesn't really matter where you put your shadows and things on, or not shadows, where you put your grain on the wood here, because, you know, they're all different. So I just got a bit of charcoal on there and blended it in so that I can work with something. And then I can look at this branch and see where it's darkest. So we've got a shine on the top through the middle there. On the right side through here, it's pretty dark. So I'm just going to darken that off through there. And then bring my charcoal over the top, lift off so where the light is, and then start to press a bit harder where it's dark again. So on this left-hand side. So just have a look at the tone in there and do some shading softly, gently. Push it in with your fingers if you want to. Don't have to, whatever you want to do. There's a few little lumps and bumps on here, so I like doing timber or branches, because you can really just create your own, really. But you can look at the shapes in there, just drawing some little lines. There's almost a couple of light stripes through the top here. Just do some little wood grain kind of shapes with your charcoal. Then we can use the kneadable eraser and take some off to get some light or detail back in. So I can grab my eraser and just draw with it. Do some little light bits, little dark bits. Create bumps and lumps. It's kind of textured and rough, this branch. So, we want to keep it or make it look like it's a natural branch, not something man-made. Okay, there we go. I think that'll do. So it's fun doing that kind of thing. Soften it off here and there to get some blurriness going on. Again, though, make sure that you do darken that side as it turns away, because that's going to make it look round. Okay, so it's all about the light and the dark and the shadows. If you want it to look rounded, you've got to make sure you have at least one side dark and one side light, and then the tone in between. Beautiful. Now we're going to have a look at that foot at the back there. So let's just have a look at that. It's literally just a black shape, isn't it? It's a bit blurred, it's far away. So let's just darken off. There's a little bit of toe that curls around the back of the branch there. And as it comes out of the bird's body, it's dark, but it's got that lovely light thing on the top. So I'm just going to do a dark shape across here like this. And it kind of curls around the branch a little bit. And then there's another little dark line back there. And I can use the eraser to get more light on this. But I just want to darken off first, because then when I put the light in, it'll stand out. Okay, so that's probably all we need to do for the dark parts on that one. It's actually got a bit of light there already that I might have left out or didn't fill in so much, which is cool. And then I can get my eraser and just draw a light kind of shape through there, just to highlight the top of that foot, because it's catching the light. Cool. And it's casting shadow. So where it's sitting on the branch, there's a shadow underneath the feet, between the feet and the branch, but the top of the feet is catching the light there. And honestly, you don't need to do much more detail than that. Just keep it really simple. Now let's see what this one's doing. So we can come down. I'm just going to just lightly put some charcoal in here. And again, we can see just at the bottom there of this front foot, the toe goes behind. So it's sitting under that branch there. Just a tiny bit, you can just see it. And then the other one comes over. And again, it's got shadow underneath it where it's sitting on the branch. I'm just going to grey that off a bit more. Darken off under where the shadow is. And then we've got, you see a triangle there between their toes? I'll show you what I mean, about there. That's a triangle in between the toes. It's the negative space on the branch in between those two toes. It's quite obvious when you look for it. Now that's a really good way to get the shape right. So you wouldn't think that the toe would be that bent and to make a triangle like that, but it is. So that's great. It's just a triangle. It's not anything else at this point. And so then we can draw in that shape, which is rather cool. And I'm just going to shade in the foot down here, and we'll put some light back on the top then. Because he's hanging on, he's got a little claw that pokes out on that big foot or big toe. I'll just have a bit of a fiddle in there. Just always looking for shapes. Look at the negative space around a shape. And just try to change your brain. You're not looking at a bird's foot, we're just looking at shapes. Pretty happy with that. So I'm just going to lighten up now. So on the top of the foot, get your eraser, make your edge, your knife edge, and do a little line. Just slightly, doesn't have to be super bright. Just do a little line on the top there so we know that that's the top of the foot. And if you've got the grey of the branch behind it or underneath it, then the light will shine. If you find it's not light and it's like you can't make it look light, you probably need to darken in here around it. So that's a good rule of thumb. If something's not getting light enough, you need more dark. So again, I can just dab the tops of these little feet, claws, whatever they are, and put a bit of light on them, and then we'll be done, I think. Pretty happy with that. Cool. And as I said earlier, if you want to put this branch in here on this side, do we need it? Doesn't hurt. Up to you. But we could literally just drop that in here. A few little shapes and dents and bumps and stuff on it. Just going to blur that off a bit. Sort of frames the bird, doesn't it, in a way? Gives him somewhere to be. Lovely. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a 5-minute break. That will give you an opportunity to finish this if you haven't done that yet and get ready for the next round. I've picked out some colours for our bird today. So you might feel like picking up all your pastels now while I'm off for 5 minutes. But we can do that together as well. So we'll talk about colours when I get back. But there's quite a lot of colours in this guy, which I thought were lovely and bright. But don't forget your darks and your lights. So I'll come back in 5 and then we'll carry on. See you soon. All right, so we're back now, and hopefully everybody's got their little charcoal birdie finished and you're looking at some colours. So I've literally just hovered my little bowl over my picture and figured out what colours I need, making sure that you've got dark all the way up to light and a few mids. I've picked out a green for the background because this one's got a green background, but you can do a different colour if you want to. You can do blue for sky with a bit of green for trees in the foliage far away. You can get a bit creative with backgrounds if you feel like it. So let's get started. First though, I want to show you something. This is a way to reuse your paper. So this painting I did in a class a couple of weeks back. It's not great. Don't really want to keep it. You know, we do a lot of practice art, and it's a shame to waste these sheets of paper because they're about $3 each, and it'd be good to reuse them, and we can. So I just want to show you quickly how you can do that. What I've got is a brush and water in there, a little bit of pencil shaving too by the looks. Okay, so I just need a bit of water and a stiffish brush, and you can actually wet it in. So you can wet the pastel and turn it into paint and scrub it into your page like this. Then when it's dry, you can use the paper again, and you've got a nice, interesting background. So they often go a bit muddy depending on what colour you've used or in your painting. But it's just a really nice way to use the paper again, even if you just want to practice on it. You know, it's good to have practice sheets of paper so you're not having to buy new stuff all the time. And sometimes you get a lovely surprise and you create a really lovely background that you enjoy and can use. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to use one of these that I've wet in. It was actually the green apples that we did the first week of this course. And I've just wet them in, and I thought, well, the background for this painting with the birdie is green. So I can use that, add a bit more, and maybe make it a little bit more interesting. So it's a good option. Once it's dry, it's fine. You can just work on it as you would a blank piece of paper. So that's an option. The other way you can wet it in if you want it to dry faster is with isopropyl alcohol. So you can actually spray it and let it dribble and do all sorts of fun things and create cool designs. Or you can just do this kind of thing. I could add more water to it and just let it dribble and run around. But I quite like what's going on in there. The purple and the green make beautiful darks. So that might be lovely for a background on something else down the track. The other fun thing you can do is if it's thick and wet like this one is, you can kind of dab it. I've got a paper towel here. So I can just dab that and create kind of patterns through it too, which is cool. So you get some really lovely patterns. Or let it dribble or do all sorts of things, but have a play and don't waste that paper. So don't feel like you can't use your paper again, because you can. It's really easy. It saves you a bit of money, and then you've got something to practice on. This is quite beautiful now, isn't it? So you can get a bit abstract if you feel like being abstract. So I can use that for something else on another day after it's dry. And this paper takes a fair bit of water, so it won't kind of go all buckly and stuff unless you don't have it flat, but just lie it flat somewhere to dry, and then you can start a new painting. It's quite exciting. So the paper I'm going to use today, as I said, is the one we did with our green apple, so you can still see it showing through there. But I think that will be fine for our birdie today. Now I've got some greens picked out in my palette for the background. Just put that back here so you can see. And that's my paper. So what I want to do is tape this down. I'm actually going to, no, I'm not. Yes, I can. I don't know. What am I doing? Yes, I will. What I want to do, for the Margaret Street Gallery that I'm a part of, we're doing a Mother's Day miniatures exhibition. And so all the paintings have to be 20 by 20. So I thought maybe I could fit this birdie in 20 by 20, and I could pop him in a frame if he turns out okay. So I might do that. Otherwise, you do the full size page, but just ignore me for a minute while I chop this up. So what's that? 23. Chop. So if I work in this kind of area, bird, I'll probably just confuse myself, and I'm not going to do it. I'll confuse you too. No, just stick to the full size. Okay, ignore those lines. Let's tape down our paper. I can find my tape. There it is. So if you want to keep your paper nice and clean and get clean edges after you fill the background in, obviously I didn't when I painted this, but you can potentially just tape all the way around the edges. So get a long piece like that. And oh, Carolyn, she must have fallen out. She goes. Long piece of tape, and you can stick it onto, just tape. I like to dab it onto my towel or my clothes or something.
Thank you, darling. God, you're here. I won't do that again.
So it's not too sticky, because then it'll come off easily. And then you can just put it around the edges like this.
Thank you. Thank you, sweetheart. I need it.
Lovely. I was just looking, Carolyn's having a cup of tea, aren't you? We heard.
Sorry, I cut myself off and I had to get back in again.
Yeah, that's okay.
And,
You're back now. It's all good.
Thank goodness my daughter's here.
Bless her. All right, we're just taping our paper on. I'm putting it all around the edges just to show you. It's not actually going to help my paper because it's already filthy. But again, just dabbing it onto my towel. The reason I do that is so that it doesn't tear the paper when I take it off. Sometimes if it's very sticky paper or tape and you rip it off, and it might be a week before you rip it off. So the longer you leave it, the stickier it seems to get. And I've torn a painting before by doing that, by not sticking it onto a towel or your clothing first, just to get some of that adhesive off a little bit. It helps. Okay. There we go. So now I've got my paper ready. What did I say on here? What color paper to use? I think I said green, eggplant or red, because red is complementary to green. So often it's nice to use the complementary color, which is the opposite on the color wheel. If something's predominantly green, then a red background or red paper would be lovely. But it really doesn't matter because we're going to fill it all up anyway. Okay. So what we're going to fill it up with is some greens. I feel like I want to do a couple of different greens just to create some depth in there. Up to you. You can keep yours really, same, or you can try a few different greens. I've grabbed 3 or 4 actually. So I've got a really dark one. So that's that one there. I've got a mid one, which is what we would have used on that apple. So that'll work nicely with what's already on my paper. And then I've got this kind of, I don't know, limey, earthy green. So I reckon those combined will be quite nice. And I've also got this lime bright green that I've picked out for the bird, but we could put a little bit of that here and there. So we'll talk about backgrounds first. I really love doing backgrounds. We're not doing it just yet because we've got to do the drawing. But by putting colour down like this, so I'll just give you an example. I'll do it up here where it won't be like bird. So some dark, a bit of mid, and then a little bit of light. It's really fun to just create different shapes and tones. And when it's all the same colour, you can create really yummy things. So now I've got some of that on there, I can start to sort of push it around a little bit with my fingers. And you just start to get subtle changes between colours and tones. See how that's gone all smooth and yummy? And I always use about 3 fingers when I'm doing a whole page like this. If it's a big background, then I'll use, quite a few fingers just to push it around and get that to look maybe like foliage or trees or something. It's not super obvious. Like I don't want to put leaves and stuff in there, but if we just suggest shapes, that's all we need to do to make it interesting. I just wonder what a bit of blue might do. So you can have a play with some colour and see what happens when you mix different colours in. It's a bit nice. That could suggest some sky, a bit of blue across the top there, or dappled around inside the greens. So I think that would be a lovely way to make the background. But let's first, before we get into that, do our drawing, get our birdie in the right spot. I'll just give my hands a wipe. So make sure you've got your little towel with the wet end when we get stuck into the pastels. Now, we're going to draw him up again, just like we did before, and we're going to measure properly this time. So this page is 23 wide, so it's 11.5. So this is our grid lines. Putting those on because then we'll be able to get our shapes in the right places. Draw a line down the middle. I'm using charcoal because it's soft and easiest to get off. If I want to remove my grid lines or go over them, then it's good to use charcoal because it kind of disappears underneath the pastel. Okay, just going to tip off some of that dust. So again, I've got a towel here on my desk, and when I need to tip off the dust, I can just tip it up and put it on this towel and then shake it later. Okay, so let's have a look at this drawing. I'll just move this over a bit. Let's have a look at this. So we'll start where we started last time, and we'll do this beautiful outline here of the birdie. So from the top of the head down to the chest. So let's work out where that goes again. So it comes inside about here on that middle line, and then up to here. So how far down did we say that was last time? Probably about a quarter-ish, maybe. Let's see, that's halfway. Yeah, sort of a quarter, maybe a bit more, a bit lower than that. So put a little mark there, and then we can determine how far into the this section does the chest go, because it kind of curves out, so it gets closer to the edge at about there. So by putting the dots on, it really helps you to draw everything and see where it needs to be. So remember we did the halfway thing up here, or yeah, we measured halfway across and halfway down, and that's about where that yellow section is. So if we come halfway down, halfway across, be about there. So just marking in those areas, and then we know where to put our line. So now we can join the dots. So we're just drawing a beautiful curve. Bing. We will lose this outside line, just saying, when we put the background on first. Okay, so we'll lose that line because we'll overlap it, but it's just good practice to get it in there now so we don't forget where it's got to go. Groovy. If you want to put a marker in for the eye, you can do that. So the eye's about there-ish. We'll measure afterwards and work it out for sure. Then we can move over into the right-hand side and continue across. So working out where the beak starts, about here. So we've got this beautiful brow of the bird. And it's got a lovely arch there, hasn't it, above where it meets the beak. And then the beak comes out. So just looking at the outside edges of everything at the moment. Don't worry about tone or anything. And then under there, so the beak has a lovely curve on the top and then a curve on the bottom. And that top beak sits just over the top of the bottom beak at the tip. And then we've got that lovely line of the chin coming out from under the beak. I'm just lightly marking in the shape of the beak while I'm here. That. I think my eye needs to be a bit lower. Cool, so that's the chin under the beak there. And then we come down here and we look at where the wing intersects our grid line down through here. So that's about there. So then we can draw our angle down through there like that. That's shorter, actually. It's got to come up a bit higher. So just make sure you check all your angles and shapes so you get them in the right place. Remembering that this bit here, that little triangle there, is a really bright part. So we've got to make sure we get that shape in there for the nice bright section of the back of the wings. Then we can come down and we can continue the tail through there. We've got that little fuzzy bit in the background. And then work out, where is this section here? So I'm just looking at the area under the tail and down towards the body, this section here. Or you could look at the negative space. So you could look at all the green around it, and that might help you work out where it's got to go. But this little V shape here under the tail, where it comes into the body, is about halfway across and probably just short of a third down. So what's a third? About that, about that. It's about that, so just short of a third and halfway across. So yeah, about there. And then you can draw that little line down through here, and then the leg, and it goes off onto the other quarter. Let me find where that went. Christine entered. Oh, everyone must be falling out today. It's not good. So look at that little shape here too. That's negative space. This one here, it's got a little arch and then it comes down like that. That's that negative space around the leg. So in here, I mean, just in the bottom there, between the leg and the body, there's that funny little shape here. The body comes down and then it goes around. I might just carry on with the body so I get that in the right place. Like that, something like that. I think his head looks a bit flat, but anyway, we'll get back to that later. So now we've got our legs. Do you want to put that little branch in down there? You can if you wish. Just mark in a line where that's going to go. And then we'll move over to this quarter and we'll put the branch in because we've got to put the feet on the branch. So if we put that in first, just notice how close it sits next to the bird's body up here at the top. And also that negative space there is good too to look at. So that's this little green section here on the top left of this last quarter that we're working in. You can see there's a lovely little, almost like a rectangle shape, but it flares out at the top and gets a bit wider. So it comes in pretty close to the bird there because he's only got his little foot showing. And then down through here, all the way down. And oh, the branch comes to down here, doesn't it? We'll change the angle then. So again, looking at where it intersects the grid line. I forgot about that bit. Down through there. And then the other side of it is something like that. Cool. So get the branch in. Look at the shapes around the branch. So the little green areas, this triangle on the bottom left corner, that's a shape there, negative shape. So that'll help you find where the branch needs to sit. The shape in between the two legs of the bird. So you can see there's a really cool shape through there. And you can literally just draw that in. And yeah, he has got 3 toes, but they're kind of messy. So when I don't know what something is like this, when you get to it, and you go, shouldn't there be 4 toes? Where's the other one? Blah, blah, blah. I just don't worry about it. I just paint what I see or draw what I see, and it's always light and dark. And sometimes something might be hiding under something and you can't find it. And it doesn't matter as long as you get those lights and darks in there, it all makes sense anyway. Unless you want to paint detail, then you have to zoom right in and find all the detail. So I'm just drawing the feet on and I'm noticing that this foot here, remember that triangle between the toes here? So that's a really helpful shape to look at, foot 4. And then we've got the other toe that kind of forms that top of the triangle. And then there's a little one that is raised up a little bit. So it pokes up here in a shape like that. So that's his foot shape. Don't worry, we're going to lose all this info anyway when we fill it up. So don't get too caught up in the drawing. This is really just, again, it's a rehearsal. We're just having a rehearsal of the shapes so that when we come to do it again, after we lose all this, we'll remember it. And I'm just doing this other foot too now. So just put basic shapes in. Don't get too caught up in it. Unless you want to do a charcoal drawing. Okay. So if you're ready, we'll move on now to putting some pastel in the background. So as I started before with some different colours, I'm just going to work my way around the outside of the guy, the bird, and all the green sections is where we want to have background. So when you put your background in, make sure that you overlap those lines of the bird, just so that the background goes behind the bird and not around it. You don't want a halo or a gap between the edge of the bird and the background. It won't look natural. So you will have to sort of just run around the edges with your green. Oh, Brian just yelled out and I didn't know what was happening. He just said there's a snake. Oh, crikey. Anyway, I'm going to stay here. Right. Yeah, so just blocking in your green area. So I'm using the mid green because this is a nice basic green that I can then darken and lighten with my other greens. So just moving it around like this, just a light coat, depending on the paper color, will depend on, you know, how much you need to get down. Just smooshing that around. I already had some up there from before, so I won't put too much there. But see how I've just blocked in where all the green is? So if your paper's not green, you might want to fill it up in those areas with the green, or whatever background color you're using. You might not want to do green. It doesn't have to be green. It can be a bit of blue, a bit of red. Red's nice with green. And now I'm just going to start to, I've got the darkest green. Just going to zhoosh a bit of that around. So not in anywhere in particular. I just want to try and create a bit of, I don't know, contrast and interest in the background. So it's not all just a flat colour. You might like the flat colour, and if you do, then do that. Up to you. Put this green down. So just sort of dance around between the greens. You can pick up the light and the dark. And what you've got to do is get it on the paper first, and then we can blend it in. So it's about getting some stuff on the paper. It's like filling it up with paint before you can use a brush. So I want to get some light. And think about this too. So see under the bird on the picture, it's quite dark under here. That's a really dark area. So if we lighten up the background around that, it'll look even more striking. So just think about, where is it darkest on the bird? How do I want to emphasize that, create some drama in my art so that the darks and the lights really pop, which is that's what I love to do. It might not be your jam, but I really enjoy doing that. So I'm thinking the bottom part of the bird is quite dark. So why don't I lighten up the background, just in smooshes, not completely, but just little bits of lighter greens, my beautiful limey color. And then think about where the lightest part of the bird is on this back area of the feathers. And if you don't know, look at your black and white version. That'll tell you the whitest parts are the lightest on the bird. So then you could potentially darken off behind those areas a little bit, just so the lights pop. Yeah. So let's do that. I'm going to get a bit of dark green here under the beak and above that wing where it's going to be quite light. So once you've got some pastel on the paper like that, and you've got different colors if you want, then I just get my 3 fingers and start to push them around. And when I'm blending, I don't go in the same direction all the time. You know, if this is foliage, then it's going to be all different shapes and directions. So move your fingers in different directions. And I keep my fingers on the page like this, and I'm just running them around. Now, you might need to press a bit harder if you need to get color to stick, but keeping them on the page, running my fingers around this way, they kind of pick up the colors. Your fingers pick up the colors as you go, and they sort of merge them together. If that's what you want, you don't have to have that kind of finish, but I really love doing these soft backgrounds and merging my colors together and just creating really subtle shapes in the background. So little soft movements, not big stripy kind of wipes, but just soft little blurry shapes like this. And I try to change the direction as I move around. I go wiggly, squiggly sort of shapes, and a bit across and a bit up and down, and all different directions to try and get that beautiful background to look lovely and lush and green. Okay, so just filling all of that in now. Now, I don't have to work as hard because I've already got stuff for the green from the apple on here. So it's filling up nicely. And this is why it's good to have a paper color that's similar to what you want to use in the background, because you can let some of that shine through. I'm just going to fill in this section here, get it all nice and yummy in the background. Backgrounds are fun. Often it's the hardest part, the background. Can get a bit tricky sometimes, but just remember to look for your light and dark. So I'm just going to lighten up a little bit more around in here. So once you've blended it in, you can actually put more on and then blend that. So until you get the light or the dark that you're after. So that's quite nice. And soften off all your edges. So make sure they kind of all merge in together nicely and blend. So see how I've lost my drawing pretty much. But that's okay because we can put it back in with pastels. Just gently pushing all the background in. I might fill up this bottom corner. I don't know whether I want that branch there or not, but I'll put green there for now. I can decide later. I might put some leaves or something there instead. So that mixture of green really makes it lovely and rich and interesting. And you can do this with any colour. So with my proteas and my bouquets lately, I've been doing these yummy backgrounds, and it's just so much fun. Because you get to play with colour, you can actually go to yourself, I wonder what purple does, and add it and see. So if I put some purple on here, I can just look at that and push it in if I don't like it. It's quite nice actually. It makes a lovely muddy, shadowy kind of colour. So maybe I want to get some more shadows around. So don't be afraid to pick up other colours as well. Red, as I said earlier, is really nice with your greens because it's complementary. But just have a play, bit of blue, whatever you feel like. And you know what? If you don't like it, you can push it in and go over it with something else. So it's not stuck there forever. Cool, cool. I might put a bit of blue up here just to suggest some sky, you know, because there could be sky poking through some trees at the back there somewhere. Put a bit of that in there. That's nice. Maybe a bit more over here. So just have a play. It's fun to play. And just be quite loose with it. Again, I was just thinking about the top of the head where it's light. Maybe I need to put a bit of dark in there just so that the lightness of the top of the head is a bit more obvious. So I can just, not too dark, I just want to get a bit more dark green in that section there. And if you've put light down here under the tummy, then just put it in another one or two other places as well, just so it doesn't look like it's on its own, that colour, because it's so lovely, limey green. It is also in the bird, so it'll kind of tie in with the colours in him. Have fun. Cool. And when you want something to go muddy or darker, press harder. So for instance, if I go put some of this light down in here and it's too light, I can just push harder, and the harder you push, it'll disappear and everything kind of blends in and gets more muddy. So you can undo things quite easily with your pastels. You're not sort of locked in, you can always change it. Rightio. Let's get back to our bird now. Is everybody ready to rock and roll with the rest of it? I'm just going to tip off my dust. I'm going to have a look at everyone and see if you're nodding. Yes, Carolyn. Yep, Christine. Okay. And who else is there? Shane, you good to go? Yep, Carolyn and Wendy, you good? Excellent.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, let's get moving on the next bit. So I'm just going to tip off all my dust. Lovely. Now, as I said, we've lost our outline a little bit. Now, if you want to, you can get your charcoal and just draw it back in lightly. So sometimes I find it's good just to mark back in where my edges are, just so I can find them again. Some parts will be quite obvious that we might have left fairly blank. We just want to make sure we get the shape in and everything in the right place. The other thing I forgot to mention was when you do your grid marks, just put a little marker on the outside of your paper, like on your tape or somewhere. So you've got these little reference points that if you do need to find the drawing again, you think, oh, damn, where was that? You know, where was that wing or where was whatever? You can use those reference points to refer back to your grid lines again, because we will lose them now. We're going to disappear off into the distance and just drawing back in the little foot shape. Again, negative space, look at all the shapes in the negative space to get your shapes right. There, I think that'll do. So just lightly to help us find our edges. So we're going to have the fun part. Well, no, well, it's all fun. What we're going to do first is the branch, because it's behind the bird or under the bird. So when I'm doing a painting, I always sit and analyze it and think, okay, what's got to be done first, second, third, fourth, etc. The background is at the back, so we've done that first, because now we don't have to get in and try and do it again later. It's really hard to get around things. So the background's in. What's next? He's on a branch, so we need to get the branch in so he can sit on it. So let's make that happen. I've got a couple of colours for my branch. I picked up this warm grey, which is rather nice. And it was probably about the closest I could find to the colours in that. And then I also got I don't know what that colour is, brown, light brown, tanny kind of colour. And I've got my blue violet, that's my darkest. And I will use that to get some of these textures and shadows and things into the branch. So we're going to put that down first. I'll start with the warm grey because it's my mid-tone. And I'm just going to literally block that in. You're going to lose your toes. So we'll have to find those again later. This piece is not flat, so it's going weird on me. So different pastels, because they're little, a lot of mine are in pieces, like little chunks, and so some are not even or flat or smooth. Okay, so some branch. So I'm just going to fill that in a bit more. Just get a bit more pastel on the page. And then I'm going to come over it with my other brown just to give, what I'm trying to do now is create a little bit of texture and tone in the branch. And to do that, you need to use different colors that are slightly different in tone. This one's a little bit lighter than the one I started with. So just wiping it over, I haven't blended yet. And then I'm going to use my blue violet. So that's a beautiful dark one. Ooh, she's lovely. To get some shadow. Remember, the top of the branch has the light and the sides are darker because they're curling away from the light. So put some dark down where it's light, where it's darkest. Cool. So something like that, and I haven't blended that in, so it's just all sitting on the surface at the moment. I will push it around again in a sec, but I do want to add, where's my white? Here. Just want to lighten up this bit here. See up the top of the branch, it's lighter, so I'm just going to throw some white over the top, and I know that when I blend that in, it won't be as white, so it'll go a bit muddier, which is good. That's what I want, but I just wanted to lighten up that end of it, because that's obviously, the bird is kind of in front of this part of the branch, so it's catching the light, whereas this section is not. It's got soft shadow over it. So noticing those things, and there's a little bit of light down here at the front or the bottom, just through that section there. Now, branches and wood are fun to do. So it's just about putting these colors on and then mixing them around. I'm going to throw a bit of red in just for fun. Again, you can make your branch be whatever you want it to be. Red's a lovely mid-tone, and that might mix nicely. So what I'm going to do is start up here in the light end and just push it in, one finger, and run it all the way down. So don't worry about your toes, we'll have to draw them in again. Just go softly, depending on how much pastel you've got on your page. I've got quite a lot, so I'm not pressing too hard. I just want to push that in to create kind of a blurry effect with those colours all sort of merging, but still trying to keep the lights and darks. Now I'm going to tip off that dust. Go. So that's looking pretty good. I like what's going on with the shadow either side there. I think that's quite yummy. I'm just going to pop a bit more of that on. And then I'm just going to start to wipe this over. So now we've blended, if you want to have a look for a sec, I'm just going to get my dark and I'm wiping it over to just get some organic kind of marks on there. So I've just wiped it lightly and I'm just pulling it down. You can tilt it and make a smaller mark if you want to do something like that. But just have a little play with getting some shapes in there. And then when you get enough, like a mark like this on there, I'm just going to lightly touch it. So I'm not blending heavily. I'm just lightly touching it so that it sort of pushes in, but not too much. And that starts to create little creases and shadows and things, which is kind of fun. I'll pop a bit of purple on too. Purple's really good for shadows. You might want a different brown, just see how you feel. If I do want a different brown. Anyway, I'm going to try this one again. So this is the tanny color that I had. I'm going to throw a bit more of that on and do the same kind of thing. Just create little shapes and marks like that with it. And then it should start to look quite organic. But you've got to blend things gently. Just go gently. And again, I'm going to push that in with my finger, but just really lightly because I want the stuff underneath to show through. So it's like if you've ever done oil painting, it's like glazing with oils. You literally layer on top of each other, and you can see the other colors through the top layers. So that's what we can achieve with pastels. And it really just comes down to the pressure that you apply, how much you blend, and you know, what sort of colors you're using. So I'm just trying to create a really natural looking bit of wood here. I think it's working. I'm going to pick up my grey. So just dance between the colors as well. So this is my warm grey that I started with. Just going to put a bit of that down too. But move the pastel in the shapes of the patterns on the tree or branch. So we're trying to get that rough sort of woody effect. Now I've got to tip off the dust again. Annoying, this dust. See how that's starting to look like it's got some texture, little bumps and lumps on it. That's what we want. This little bump here is rather nice. I like that one. So I can lighten that up a little bit with my mid brown. There's another one over there. Lighten that one up. So you can just do different little shapes. You start off, excuse me, with a big mark. So you start off with big, bold, kind of loose marks. And then you can start to work on the detail using the edges of your pastels because they're a sharper edge to get some little lines through there like that. And because I've got dark underneath, now it looks like shadow. So it's kind of cool. You'd have a bit of fun with it. And it really makes you look at the patterns in things, doesn't it? It makes you look closely at how things are formed and different shapes. So this is starting to now look like a real branch, which is what I want. It's all about the light and the dark. So this is not super light. This is my mid brown, but over my darks, it looks light. So there's all those things to think about too. I'm going to leave it there before I muck it up. Tip off my dust. Lovely. Now, we might do the feet first because the bird is sort of on top of the feet, if you know what I mean. So let's work on the feet. And once they're in place, then we can get to do the fun stuff with all those yummy colours. So we'll start with this back foot, and same as we did before, we're literally just going to mark in where that sits. I'm using charcoal because I can use that to draw, and then once I've got my shape back in and I know where everything's got to go, then I can pick up the pastel and fill it in basically. It's just like colouring in really. Well, sort of. So the claws come around like that. I'm just looking at the dark areas on those claws. And I've got it up on the screen. I keep forgetting to look over there. So it's kind of dark through here, dark across there, and the dark bit there. So that's that shape. And to put that in, I'm going to use my blue violet. So that's my darkest pastel. You might only have black, or you might have something else, a really dark brown or really deep blue would work. This is the blue violet Art Spectrum brand. And I'm going to draw now with that where I can see all the darks. So that's the bottom of the foot coming out of the body. It's that little toe that goes around the back of the branch. So we've got that lovely shape that comes around there. And then we've got that dark shadow of the claw that comes across like that. And then we've got a dark shadow up here of that little back claw. Can you see that there? It's a little line that runs across like that. And what else have we got? That's probably about all we can really see clearly. I know there is another one in there, I think, but it's not as obvious. So see what I've done? I've put down my darkest because that's going to be my shadow side. And then I can come back in with a lighter colour, which will be probably the brownie tones that I've used in the branch. So we don't want to go straight to white, but we will go lighter and that'll give it form. But first I'm just going to dab this in so that it's sticking to my paper. This colour it's a great colour, but it's very crumbly. And so you really need to push it in sometimes or it won't hang on. Okay. So that's that dark area in there. And again, if you feel like your blue violet or whatever you're using isn't dark enough, you can always go to black. I just like to use something else first before I go straight there because there's nowhere else to go really once you go to black or white. So I like to experiment and see what else will do the job first. And we've also got cast shadow down on here under the foot. So that dark area will help to create that as well. Now I can pick up I'm going to get my warm grey. That's the one I started with on the branch. And I'm going to put the rest of the foot in. So this will bring the light back in now. It's not as bright as it's going to get, but it's just going to help me find where the light's got to go. Down through there. There's a little bit on top of that back toe. So when you do it like that, without going all the way to white or the lightest colour in your palette, then you have, the option to go to white if you want to get lighter, or leave it as it is, or use other colours to work on the tone. So same thing, don't go straight to white because there's nowhere else to go after that. I'm not going to get too caught up in the detail of these just because I will use this little brown one and see if that lightens up a little bit more. So that's quite nice. Dab it just softly like that to soften it off and then tip off my dust. Yeah, pretty happy with that. If you want to now, you can look at this and go, all right, where is the lightest light? So there's a little bit of white. I've got white now. I will push that in and quieten it down a bit. It's a bit too bright, I think. If we get to the end and you think, oh no, I really do want to lighten that up a bit more, then you can just grab your white and do it. But just be cautious. So we've got that light section there where the foot comes out of the body. And then there's a light section on top of that main claw. Comes down through there like that. Now I feel that's a bit too light. So I'm just going to dab it again to blur it off because this one is further away and we don't want to have too much detail there. But I reckon that'll do. That'll do, Prue. And you can always come back and change stuff. We're just getting the basics in there for now. Cool. And now we can come down to this other leg or foot. So it comes out of here. It's got a little bump there. So we've got a little, do this one also with my grey, and then I can put my darks and lights in. So there's a bumpy shape through there. And it comes across like this. And down at the back there. And so this foot, let me have a look at your foot, comes across like this. So that toe kind of sits, and the tip of the toe lifts up off the branch because it's the little nail, the pointy bit. So we can just fill in where that's got to go, and we'll do the tones in a minute. And then we come across here and we've got that triangle shape, remember? So that's helpful. I'm losing some of my colour in here because it's the same colour as the branch, but that's all right. And then a bit more up here, another one there. Something like that. Now I can grab my blue violet. So again, back to dark. And I'm going to darken off in this bit here where the comes out of the body because that's in shadow and it's dark. So just filling in that section there and then dabbing it lightly to blur it a little bit. Okay. And then come down to the foot. So it's under the foot where the shadow is. So just draw a shadow there under the foot and another one on the other side. So in that triangle shape, like that. And a bit of a shadow or something over in here, some sort of mess. So that's pretty much what's going on. And then I'm just going to put a little bit more on to get that rounded effect on the foot. I'm just dabbing that on and then I'm going to dab it with my fingers. You can see I've got some of that in my background now. The good thing is when you fill a background in, you can just rub the crumbs in and they, you know, get swallowed up with the background. So when it's difficult when you don't do a background, as we found out, because your paper gets so dirty. Now I'm just dabbing this now really lightly. If I blend it, I'll lose all the detail, but just give it a little dab with your fingers. Dab, 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 like that. See how that sort of softened everything off a little bit? And then you can come back in and keep working on your shadows. I'm going to see what charcoal does. It might not be dark enough. Not really, no. But it's quite nice. Sometimes charcoal works with pastel. So then I can come back over and darken that again, a little bit more through there. Just keep checking with your picture and looking at how dark it is in different spots. It's a shadow, and then I probably need to come back over with some lighter tones to get the shape of the foot in there on top of the branch. So have a little play with that. You'll need to use the sharp edges of your pastels to get these fine lines. It's a bit tricky sometimes because some pastels don't have sharp edges. They can be quite crummy and it's nearly impossible to get hard lines. So as you keep using pastels, you'll get familiar with different brands and you'll work out which brands or which kinds will do different things. So when you want sharp edges, harder pastels are really good because they keep the edge nice and sharp. Whereas if you're trying to do them with things like a schminky, which is really soft, then often you can't do it because it's just too buttery. So you do learn, and they are all different, which is the problem because then you need lots. So what I've done now is I've got the dark under where the toes are, and I'm going to put a bit more dark up in here just because I can. And I've put the browns on the toes, but I can now use my white to get those little bits of highlights on, but I want to get rid of the dust first. Okay. So now if I use my white, we've got kind of, it's sort of a light, it's not catching the light, but it's a lighter tone through here. So I'm just going to softly put a bit of white down in there, in that section there, and just dab it in a little bit so it's not really strong. And then I want to get light on this main claw here at the front. So that's a line like that. And again, that's going to have to be softened off, but we'll just get some light in first and then we can dab them off a little bit. It's kind of how that's working, I think. And you can do the little claw on there. Oops, made it too fat. This is the trouble when you're doing tiny things. It's really hard to get those fine lines sometimes. And your blender like this will come in handy because you can soften things off a little bit, quieten them down. If your fingers are too chunky, use your blender just to soften and dab. and push the pastel around a little bit. They're actually really useful for pushing the pastel around and getting different textures and things. That's not the greatest toe in the world, but I think it's going to have to do. Don't mind how that's looking. So just have another glance over your branch. You might want to add a little bit more shadow or something. Have a play with that. Why not? If you're up to there. Quite nice. So windy here today. Been raining and raining and raining for days and days, and now it's windy. So hopefully it'll dry things out a bit. All right, let's move on to our bird. This has been the fun part. What we're going to do is block in all these delicious colours, and then we'll work on the detail and the feathering. So we've picked out, I've got a red for his head. That's that colour there. I've got this yummy blue for the chest. I've got a deep blue for under the chest where the shadow is. We might add some purple into that too. Yellow for the wings and the back of the neck. And then this yummy lime green. So I chose this one because I thought it'd be nice to finish class on a bright thing, something bright and chirpy. All right, so now what we've got to do is look at all the sections. So let's have a look. We can start with the head and we can block in the head with the red. So just grab your red and literally rub that all around the red section of your bird. You want to go over the eye, you can. You'll have to find it again later. I'm just going to try and leave a little hole there so I can find it later. Under the chin is red and we can darken that off later. So just all the red stuff. Kind of curls around there like that. Lots of dust. Reds are usually quite dry and dusty. It's hard to get a really creamy red. I don't know why. It must be the pigment, because different pigments do feel different. Okay, I've got to tip the dust off. Can't work with that mess there. So that's a bit of red. And now we can come down. What's next? What have we got? We've got some yellow back here. So literally just blocking in all the colours. Wherever you see the colours, I want you to just fill it in like this. And then afterwards we'll mix them up and do delicious things. Add some darks and lights and stuff. Got that yummy bright yellow section back here behind the neck on the right. And we get that quite light or yellow as I can. And that yellow runs all the way down the back of the feathers, down to here, or the wings, sorry. So blocking in the yellow. Throw a bit in the face while I'm here. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the face. I'm seeing where it's a lighter red, sort of an orangey tinge. So if I throw a bit of yellow over that, that will help to highlight that section. I like to economize and do things, you know, while I've got a yellow in my hand, I'll look around and go, where else is there yellow? Where else can I put this? So you can kind of move around your painting and find different areas to put your colour. Okay, that's yellow. And we've done red. So next is this delicious blue chest here. I'm going to block all that in. It's a bit yum, isn't it? Such a nice colour. You might not have the exact right colour. Don't stress. Doesn't really matter as long as you've got the variations in some form. When you come down to the bottom here, just sort of pull some down so that when we go back over that with the darker blue, we can kind of join them together. And I just noticed there's a really hard line here between the blue and the yellow, just down there. And I've gone too much blue there, so I have to come back over here with my yellowy green, which is fine because blue and yellow make green, so that's cool. See the distinct difference there in the picture? There's definitely a straight, fairly straight edge down through there between those colours, which is interesting. But don't be afraid to put your blue over your yellow. Up here around the neck, we've got to merge them a little bit. Looks like we need some green in there as well. Put a bit down in here. So that's our yummy blue. And I'm going to put my darkest blue down in here on the bottom of the bird because there's shadow there. And we want the dark there so that we've got the highlight behind it. And it'll give it form. Also going to put some of this dark in the tail and the wing where you can see those dark bits. I will darken that off with other stuff, but just get that tone in there now. Lovely. I want to see what purple does when I put it in here. Purple and blue, yum yum. That's really nice for some dark as well. So don't be afraid to pop some purple in now and again where you want shadow. So particularly under the beak, not the darkest purple. This is a violet. We call that purple. Purple. But as I said earlier, when I want to go dark, I don't go straight to the darkest. I sort of work my way up to it because sometimes a purple or something else will be enough. So it's just good to give yourself options. Don't jump in too much first off. But yeah, that's nice. The purple is lovely, and that'll help to create some shadow down through here where his little head's turning. All right. And next we're going to push all of this in, and then we'll come back over it and do another layer. So I'll tip my dust off again. There we go.
All right.
Now we can start to fill this in. So I haven't done the beak yet. We'll do that after. But once you've got enough colour on there, we can start to blend it in. But what you've got to do is look at the shape of everything and the direction of everything. So the head feathers kind of go back, don't they? They sort of branch out from around the beak area and they fan out a little bit. So when you're blending it, just do that with your fingers. Run in the direction of the feathers so that it makes sense. Because I've put a couple of colours in there already, but when we add more colours like the darks, etc., then it'll make more sense because it's all sort of going to run into each other. So pull the pastel around in the direction of the feathers that are growing. It's really important to do that. Now see here where I've put the purple down under here, and as I pull it up, it goes to this beautiful dark tone into the red, but it's kind of really soft. So it's kind of merging up into there with soft lines. Now I know that's definitely not dark enough, but we'll come back to it. I just want to get everything pushed in first, and then we'll come and start working on the details. So once you finish doing the red section where the head is, give your hand a little wipe on a semi-clean finger because we're going into yellow next, and yellow's lighter. I want to try and keep it light if we can. It will go darker, that's normal. But here's my yellow on the back of the neck here. And again, I'm just going to pull it in the direction of the feathers. So I'm just doing soft little feathery marks like this, and I'm going back and forth to just kind of pull it around in that direction. And as you do that, it sort of mixes with the other colours that are near it, and it creates this lovely gentle gradient. So there's a definite edge of the red and the yellow, so we don't want to blend them too much because there's a definite line between the two. But down here where the yellow merges into green and then blue, it's much softer, so we can kind of merge those together. So if you just grab your finger, again, look at the direction of the feathers and pull them around like this. And when I'm doing this, I'm actually leaving my finger on the paper. I'm not lifting it up. So keep it on the paper and you get a much more consistent blend. So that's that section around there. So just across the bottom of the neck, pulling the colour around. If you go too dark or lose your colour, don't stress, we can put it back in. It's okay. But always put more in. Now I'm going to go, before I go onto the chest, I'm going to go back over here to the wing, because the wing is behind the chest technically. And I'm going to push that one in too. So just pulling it around like this. Again, follow the direction of the feathers or the lines. So soft little movements in the direction of the feathers. Look at the shapes and see which way they're going. If it gets all mixed up and blended, don't stress. I'm pressing pretty lightly, but it will depend on your paper and how much pastel's on the paper as to how hard you've got to press. Lots of dust on there, but we'll keep going. Okay, now I'm going to come over to the chest, and you can see there's a lovely big blue shape here, bright blue shape, and the feathers kind of fan out from the middle of the chest. They come down and they fan out a little bit. So over to the left, our left, they sort of go off to the left a little bit. So I'm just going to pull my finger in that direction. Okay. And get that kind of that fan effect. Now it's not obvious because it's all the same color, but just it's good practice to notice which direction you've got to pull it in. And then coming around, so you get to the middle, it's sort of up and down. And then as you go over to the other side, it starts to sort of fan out a little bit again. And then we can move down into the dark section down here. This is going to have to be darker, but for now, we'll just push this in because this is our foundation coat. We're going to put more on top. So pushing all this in. Just getting rid of that charcoal outline. If you've got charcoal outline and it's not inside the bird, then if it's in the background, you might just want to push that in to the background. Cool. All right. Once you've got that pushed in, then tip off the dust. Then we're going to start looking at the tones and the detail. So we'll start up in the head and we'll do the beak first. And then we're going to look at all the little bits of dark tone through the reds, especially that dark under the beak there, and use our blue violet to get those beautiful dark tones in. And then a little bit of light on top of the head up here. The eye is quite dark and it's got a little ring around it. You notice that? So it's a black eye and then it's got a ring around it that also has a white shine on it. So that will be fun. So let's focus on the beak first. So I've picked up my warm grey. This is the colour I use down here in the branch and the feet because I don't want to go straight to white. Same reason as before. I can put white on after if I feel I need it. Let's start with this grey and just get this shape on of the beak as best we can. Remember, it's got that interesting little shape at the top. It's like the nose of the bird, and then it has a little round section there and comes across like that. That's the top. A bit more arched than that. So just check your angle too. Now it's going to be hard to get your finger into that section, so you might be able to just do it with the pastel and not touch it again. Sometimes that's possible. But if not, then you might need a little blender just to push it all in. And if you muck up the shape, But you can always come back with the red and go around it. So don't stress if it's, you know, got too big or something. You can just grab your red again and kind of go over those bits that you didn't want to have in there. Like that. Easy peasy. So that's the top beak, and then it gets darker, and then we go down and we've got the bottom beak. So I'm just going to draw that in lightly. So it kind of goes like that shape, doesn't it? It's not as light as this, but we just need to get something in there so we know where to go. And then we've got that light line that runs across like that into his face. And there's a little bit of light just here on that bottom beak on the far left, where it goes into his face. It's a bit of shine on that. Cool. So now I've got this all put in. Dab it with my fingers and push it in a bit more. So that's kind of the mid-tone grey that I want to get onto the beak. And now I can pick up, let's try charcoal. It doesn't have to be dark enough, but sometimes charcoal is a good option. Just because it's a bit easier to manage with its sharp edges. So you can try charcoal for the lines. It's not really working for me, so I'm going to have to go back to my blue violet, which is difficult because it's so crumbly. Anyway, there's a bit of dark here on the top of the beak. See that bit there? I'm going to try and find a sharp edge on this little piece and draw that dark line across here. You might have pastel pencils, so this is where they would come in handy. So like a black pencil or something dark. And just darken off underneath where the bottom beak sits under here because it's in the shadow. Something like that. And then while you're here with your dark in your hand, we can darken off this area under the chin. So something like that. And then edges. Just looking at the beak for the moment, even though I strayed away and did the chin. Once you've got some dark on there, see how you go sort of pushing it around a little bit. Just want to soften off some of those edges and blur things a little bit so that it's not too strong. The beak folds down, so we need to try and get it to look like it's got shadow. Cool. All right, so it's not as light as I want it, but I can lighten that up with a bit of white to get the highlight on the beak. And we also need to get a bit more definition in that dark area around here where the two beaks join. Need a bit more dark in there, I reckon. And a bit more dark under the bottom there. Don't be afraid of the dark, because that's what's going to make this come alive. Groovy. Tip off my dust. So that's okay, that's all right. And as I said before, if you go outside the lines and get something on the background, just grab the green or whatever you've used and patch it up. Easy peasy. Just try not to make it look obvious that you've patched it up. So then if you do that, like I just did, sort of spread a bit more as well. Push it in. Go. And I can get my white now. So if you're happy with the beak and where it sits, you can get your white. And I'm just going to put a touch of it on the top here. Just put a little bit on like that. I'll soften it off in a minute. And then remember that little line that we had down there? Lovely soft line. Sort of got the edge of the beak where it joins the top part. And so, because you've got the light white there, I'm just going to dab that now. So I don't want it to be really light just yet. I can lighten it again later. Cool. That's looking all right. Do for now. So it's all about really gentle touch. When you get to the fine lines like this, you just got to go really gently. And often you've got to redo it a few times. That's what I find. If I'm kind of go over stuff. I put it on, dab it in, put it on again. There's a lot of back and forth as well. That's the way I do it. And in the end, you finally do get there. But it's just there's plenty of space for error. You know what I mean? So if you don't get it right the first time, you just dab it off and have another go. So you can redo things really easily with pastels. So I'm just going to leave that beak right there. If we need to, we can come back later and have another look at it or change something. Sometimes when you have finished, you know, your painting, you see things that you missed first time around. So that's okay. All right, back to the head now. Let's have a look at the head. I'm going to figure out where the eye went. So what did we say earlier? It sits sort of about here, doesn't it? At the right spot out there. Just marking it in with charcoal. Yeah, I reckon it's about there. Now, let's have a look at this head. I want to get more red in here first before we do anything else, and then we can get some dark and light back in. So I'm just going to put more red on, and instead of filling up, you know, and blending in, I want to try and use the paper and the pastel to get a bit of texture in here. So what I'm using is the end. I'm holding it flat on the paper, but then tipping it up just a little bit so that one end is touching the paper and the other end isn't. And that gives me kind of this nice wide mark that isn't a sharp edge, but it just gives me a nice little mark. Then I can do these little fluffy kind of marks with it. So little drawing kind of shapes. What I'm trying to do is get the feathery look. So little dabby kind of shapes with it. And coming around. So just again, check the direction of the feathers that you're doing. Everything seems to kind of fan out in away from the beak. Coming down through the bottom there. Put a little bit down in the bottom, but that'll be mostly darker. So there is a little bit on the edge there. You've got to suggest that it's still the same colour. It's just darker because it's in shadow. Or probably might be darker anyway in colour. So that's the red on there, and I haven't blended it. I'm going to try not to blend it too much. And then I want to lighten up the top of the head. So I'm not going to go straight to white because red plus white equals pink, and we don't want to be too pink. Okay. So I see more of a goldy tone in that. You might see white, I don't know, but let's try a touch of yellow first. If it's not enough, we can always go lighter. So I'm just touching a little bit of yellow just on the top there where the light is. Not much, just wipe it over and you get that lovely soft kind of fluffy effect if you don't blend it in. If you're not happy with it, you can dab it in like this, maybe quieten it down a tad if it's too light. But just dab gently and notice that stripe. Remember that stripe that we talked about before? Comes down to the beak here. It's like a light fold of feathers. So I've kind of left that stripy part red and then put the yellow either side of it. Don't ask me how. I think I just wiped it there, and then I wiped it there, and I kind of left a gap between the two. If that didn't work for you and you want to get your stripe back in, just grab your red again and draw it in. See, easy peasy. Okay, so that's that bit. And then up around here above the eye, that brow is very red. So I'm just going to add more red to that, red it up a bit more. And just here to the left under the eye as well, it's quite red there. Now I'm going to pick up my purple. This is not my blue violet darkest. This is just purple. Because I want to get a little bit of tone through here. See between the beak and the eye? There's a darker tone there. And then at the back of the head, from the eye to the back of the head, there's like a little shadow. That's definitely not dark enough, but it's going to help to create shadow when I bring the darker colour in. So we're just subtly creating a little bit of tone through here. You see those little feathery marks? You can use your purple just to get some little marks in like that will help to create that feathery effect. All right. Now I'm going to tip off the dust and then see what we need to do. Okay. I think what I want to do is just dab this in a little bit so it sticks. Dabbing, not blending, just dabbing. Dabbing just lets the colour stay on the surface without pushing it around too much and making mud. And now we're going to come in with the dark. So I've got my blue violet, my yummy dark, and bring that down through there under the chin. But notice around the beak, we've got some dark sections here. And then on the edge of the beak where it comes into the face, there's dark. And under the beak, I'm using the end of the pastel to get the dark tone in there. And then as I come across the face, I'm kind of lying it down flat so it's not quite as a strong mark. I'm keep it kind of loose. And then dark around the neck. A few little dabs here and there to get some texture in there maybe. A few little dabs at the back there of the head. Because this colour is so strong, but it really helps us to give the feeling of the tones. Now I'm going to dab, don't blend. If you blend, you'll make mud and it'll just all go one colour and really yucky. We want to try and keep that nice and bright. So just dab like this with your finger because we're pushing it into the paper and blurring it off slightly, but not blending. You might need to wipe your hand in between dabs just to clean your finger off a little bit. See how that's now created a really lovely combination of the light and dark, but they're just subtle. So we've got the little cheek here, this area here under the eye is lighter because it's popping out and catching the light. We've got our crease over here, which we need to do again, darken off a bit more. So now you can come in and start to do the finer details like those creases, the edges of the beak, etc. The purple and the red are just yummy together. Okay, let's get this eye in. I've lost it again now. Where was it? It's my halfway mark, so it's slightly to the left of that, about here. You've got to get the eye in the right place or it'll look weird. Yep, that's good. Now, the eye is black. So I don't have black here, but I'm going to fill it in with blue violet. I'll get black after. Just want to get a bit of dark on there first. Now, have you got a white pencil? Because that's going to be your best friend in a minute. I have to go and track one down. Oh no, there it is. white charcoal pencil. Because what we want to do with that, see around the eye, it's got a light kind of line. So if you've got a white pencil, see how you go, just putting a very soft light line in like that around the outline outside. What that is light reflecting off the outer edge of the bird's eye. And if it's too much, just give it a little dab and push it off. We don't want it to be super obvious. Here comes a snake catcher.
Right.
G'day. Okay. Coming around like that. And then we've got the shine on the top. Okay.
Get that in the rock. So that's where he's coming from, the rock. Well, where I saw him.
I'm just going to mute this so you don't have to listen to
in
this
this corner here.
snake catcher conversation,
There you go. Mm.
and we'll carry on. So sorry. Drama. Okay. Where were we? So the eye is maybe not black enough. So I feel like I want to darken that off a little bit. I'm going to go and grab a black pastel. All right, here we go. This one's called Ivory Black. It's an Art Spectrum brand. It's a long stick, not been broken yet, but that's okay. I think I'm going to just use it as it is and just fill in this dark part of the eye through there. That's better. Now we've got more drama. See how the dark makes the light brighter and pop? Oh yeah, now we're in business. Oh, sorry, I'm just getting the dog. Well, this was in the way, so I didn't push you to get out. I'm staying here. Stay. Sorry again. To lock off the dog door and all the things. All right. So, yep, that black's much better. So I'm just going to touch up the white around the eye a little bit. And then give it a little dab. Hush. There we go. I'm really happy with that. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so now we've got the head done. And of course, we can always come back and do other things at the end. We're going to move down now through the feathers. So let's put some more yellow back here. And I'm just going to do, what we're going to try and do now, because we've blended already, everything's blended and on the paper. So what we want to do now is start to use the pastels without blending. Okay. And because we want to get some texture and feathers in here, we're going to not blend, because the minute you blend, it goes all smooth. So now we're going to learn to use them to get texture happening. And it's just different movements. So because these are feathers, we're going to do little feathery marks like this. Okay, so around the edge of that neck there where the yellow starts, soft little feathery marks. See how that's starting to look a bit feathery now? And then as I come down around the blue, it'll start to overlap a little bit and get really nice through there. That's what we're trying to achieve. Now, you might start to make patterns. I can see I'm starting to make a pattern because I'm holding my pastel in the same at the same angle for the whole thing. So you've got to kind of twist it a little bit, vary the shape a little bit to get the variation of the shapes. Once you've done this side, we're going to come back over now to this really bright area of yellow that sits up here behind the chin. And I just want to make sure I get that nice and bright through there so that that's the dark part of the bird under the chin against that lovely light yellow feather. And then same thing, just do these soft little shapes like that coming down. You can fluff off the edges a little bit because, you know, they're going to be a bit fluffy and soft just to get a lovely feathery effect. How yummy is that? I'm going to zhoosh a little bit over this way as well. That's more green in there, and I'll put green over the top. I think it'd be nice with a bit of yellow underneath it first. When you get down to this section, these air feathers on the bottom of the wing are kind of green as well. But I'm just going to pull now, short piece, and just pull it across like this to create those lines. Like that. So we're getting all that lovely texture in there. Now, we've got to think about shadow as well. So I'm going to come back to the shadow under here. We're going to come back to that. I want to get the blue in now. We're kind of working our way down the page from top to bottom. So we've got some kind of greeny blue stuff happening here between the head and the chest. I'm going to put a bit of green in there. And while I'm here with my green, I'm going to zhoosh a bit of that over here into the yellow as well, because we've got yellow and green coming over the top of the yellow. So putting a bit of that through there. See how the pastels they just mix together without us doing it, because they sort of sit on top of each other and they mix really nicely without getting our fingers in. The minute you put your fingers in, it goes muddy. Lovely. And this is a painting, so we don't have to have it exactly the same unless you are that way inclined. I do get a little bit caught up with realism sometimes. So a bit of green around there. And what else is in there? I might throw a bit of dark blue through here as well, just for fun, because it is darker under there than on the chest. So maybe a little bit of dark blue around that area there. Ooh, it's coming together nicely. I'm going to put a bit of that over here too. What I'm going to do is lie it flat like that in the direction of the feathers in the wing. Can you see how they come down like that? So if I pull this dark blue just lightly down through here, that's going to start to create some really nice shadow. And then I can come back over that with my green or yellow and it'll give me depth. So you've always got to look below what you're doing. Look behind and below and build up from the bottom to the top or back to front. Ah, yum. All right, so just a bit of dark through there. Pulling the pastel in the direction of the feathers, always in the direction. I'm just going to come around the bottom here now. You can see on the bottom of the chest there, all those lovely feathers that sort of swish down underneath. So my dark blue through here. Then we'll pick up the bright blue. Righty-ho. Now, this is delicious colour. It's So I've already got a fair bit of that on there, but I'm going to add a bit more and kind of pull it down into this darker section too. So this is a big fat square one. It's a Art Spectrum Extra Soft. So they're a big square pastel. They're quite nice for wide marks like this. And they're really good for sharp edges as well. So you can use any side of them. They're quite versatile. And they're a bit softer than the other Art Spectrums. I'm just going to blur the edges of all these things, kind of up under the chin, pull some of the blue up into there. Definitely out on that left side and across the center of this blue section is really blue, isn't it? It's kind of really beautiful, bright blue. It's lovely. However, we need to get some darks in there. Let me just see what else I need to do first. I'm going to put a bit more green over the top now. So just have a look around your picture and see, you know, do I need to add something else? Is there more green or more blue or more whatever? Do I need to come back over the top? Let's do that over here in the feathers on the wing. Remember, I put a bit of dark blue down first, just little stripy kind of movements. And now I can come back with the green and just press a little bit harder in a couple of spots. And that'll really emphasize the brightness of those feathers. So you can see those back here, just in there, those green feathers, they're quite bright. So we can emphasize those a little bit. And they're just marks, they're just lines like that. Because we've got a bit of darker tone underneath, now it's starting to look thicker and lush. Cool. And then on the back or the tail area, we've got some green down there too. So shush it there for a minute. Beautiful. And look at that beautiful little shiny feather just there. That's this fella here. And behind and underneath that is super dark. So we're going to have to get some of that yummy blue violet and darken off a little bit more under there, just so the lights can pop. Beautiful. Now, yep, so I think now it's time to start to add some darker tones to get the shadow happening. Because at the moment he's looking a bit flat. The head's pretty good because we've got enough tone in the head, but not so much in the body. So we need to really start looking at that next. And again, if you look at your black and white version, that's where you'll find your darks and lights. So you can see on the black and white picture under here is really quite dark. If you squint, it's a big dark blob. So we need to darken that off a lot more. My blue violet, if you don't have that, maybe you've got something else that's really dark or a black. I'm reluctant to use black, but if that's all you've got, that's all you got. So I'm doing these little feathery marks again with the blue violet because I really still want to get the texture of the feathers, and you can see the texture of them. I'm just going to touch up the top of this leg while I'm here because it needs to be darker too. So you can see the texture of the feathers, and they all sort of swish up this way, don't they? They kind of come up in a little angle. So what I'm going to do is just pull this up, and as I get higher and higher, my marks will get softer and further apart. See how that's now starting to look feathery? So I'm using it on its side because I don't want to use the end and get a hard line. That'll be too defined like that. That's too strong. What I want to do is just use the side of the pastel and pull it around and get it to look feathery, as feathery as I can. And sometimes it's better to do it long ways, like that. See how now it's starting to get some form and look alive. I think the snake got away, damn it. All right, dark under here. And then Just going to go up through here. Now I'm looking at the wing now and noticing all the little dark areas in there. And again, look at your black and white version because that'll find them for you. We've got a lovely dark part there at the back. And then this dark tone through here. Just a little bit of zhooshing through there. You don't want to get too much of this dark purple into those beautiful light colours because it'll go really muddy. Cool, cool.
Well, that's where the water went, mate.
It's
You
gone.
want that from South England?
It's gone.
More than likely.
Okay, just darken up under the chin.
That's solid.
Make sure you get that nice and dark too. And that line down from under the beak into the chest, that section there. Make sure you get that there with that beautiful bright yellow behind it. Just going to dab that softly because I want it to stick. There we go. My tip off my dust.
Good, that's, yes, but, yeah, it looks close enough, and there was a cave going straight to it.
Gently pull that up through the chest now. So just softly, don't want to blend it too much. Just going to mix that in a little bit more.
You can go around over the deck. They're gonna be caves.
Okay, and there we are. Just put a bit more dark on because I want my lights to pop. There's a bit of dark just through there. So just run your eye around him now and figure out where are all the little dark shadowy bits. There's a bit of a shadow, see under the neck, and we've got that greeny orange or blue, sorry, greeny blue color there. I'm just zhooshing a tiny bit of this blue violet through there. And then I'm going to pull it very lightly up in here. Hardly touching. And it's pretty much not staying on the paper much, but it just gives me a tiny little bit of tone through there. Now, in the colour version, this blue section of the chest is really blue. But in the black and white versions, it's interesting actually. See how light it is? Isn't that amazing? You wouldn't think that that lightness there was this. And I didn't adjust it at all. So it's really good to have a black and white version of your picture because you can see then where the lights are, more so than on a colour one. Sometimes colour's a bit tricky to see. So I can see I might need a lighter blue, or should I try white? I don't know. Let's see. Let's see what happens. I'm just going to lightly put a bit of white through here just to see if that will lighten it up enough. Sometimes white can turn things a bit milky. So it's going a little bit milky, but I don't mind it. I just wanted to get some light through there just to bring that chest out a little bit more and emphasize the darkness under the chin. And over here on the back of the neck, you can see it's really light there too. So that's where we've got our yellow. I'm going to add a little bit of white in there just to lighten up a little bit of it because the light is hitting that section. So when you add a bit of white to your yellow, it goes like a lemony color, which is nice. It's still fairly warm, but if you put it into red, it'll go pink. And I think pink wouldn't work. I'm also going to lighten up this section back here behind the beak. Just a tiny bit, not too much. And then all down the edges, can you see down this side on the left, there's a little bit of white or light just down through there. There's actually a bit of a wing if you want to put that in. I don't know if I'll be bothered, but there is a touch of light that just comes down that edge softly, softly, and that kind of tapers off. So you could gently pull that down and just blur that off a little bit. See how it's coming alive now? It's all about tone, isn't it? Light and dark. That's what makes things happen. Okay, I'm just going to zhoosh this in a little bit more, not blending, just dabbing. And down through this bottom section in here, I just want to do some lines now of feathers. Can you see on the picture, we've got these blue sort of finer lines that sort of come down like that over the top of the dark. So if you've got your dark down now, you can just get the edge of your pastel and do these little fine lines like that to give him a bit of a more feathery effect. I'm going to do it up here too, and then I'll put a little white. So I'm not a fan of the white, to be honest. Been happier with a blue, a light blue would be nicer. Or maybe pale yellow. I always head to pale yellow. If I want a warm light rather than white, pale yellow is a lovely option, usually. Just going to put a bit of white on the eye too. If you haven't done that, I'm going to lighten that up a tad. Just do it softly and see how you go. Don't want it too strong. That'll do. Just a gentle little dab. It's actually too white now. Dab it in a bit more. There we go. Tipping off my dust. All right, what else do we need to do? Let's have a look. Not much really. I might just touch up the tail because we've got that little tail that wanders away in the background there. What colour will I use? Maybe purple. Try purple. Because it's not strong, it's a blurred, soft sort of colour. So I'm just going to put a bit of purple in there. Put it up too high. Never mind. Sorry, bird. And where else do we need some purple? Maybe a little bit of some lines here through the feathers just to create some more depth. Purple's so lovely. There we go. That looks nice and fluffy now. I'll put some over here too. Really not enjoying that white. I think I'm going to get rid of it. Go away. Yeah. I'll go and get a lighter blue, I think. See if that'll help. Might be a bit nicer than white. White's just a bit too flat sometimes. See what else I can find. Try that one. It's better. It's better. Yeah, so you just got to try things sometimes. If it doesn't work, just go over it and try another colour. And then if you do fill up your paper and you can't get any more on, give it a little spray with your fixative and then you'll be able to load up more pastel onto it. Gorgeous. I think we're just about done. Okay, I still want to I'm just going to run my eye around this now and see where else I need to darken. So I'm looking at the head and I think between the eye and the beak need a bit more dark. I'm just going to zhoosh a bit of that on there with my blue violet. Not too much because it's so strong, but I do want to get a bit more dark through there. That's a bit better. And then under here, under the beak again, make sure that's nice and dark. If you feel like your dark purple's not dark enough, go to black. But, you know, at least you gave it a go, is what I always think. I tried that, but it wasn't enough, and now I can go to the darkest. Yeah, the dark makes such a difference. I'm just going to zhoosh around here too, a little bit. You can soften that off a tad. Just dab, dab, dark, dark, dab, dab. Lovely. Soften off the edges. Try not to have hard lines between colours because this is all soft and fluffy. Around the beak, we need a bit more dark under here and on the edges. And inside on the top there. And there's a little dark section here on the beak. just comes out like that. Under it. Mhm. So this is when you start to do the detail, when you're really noticing what's going on. My dog's going off a nut because we won't let her outside. Here you go. Stop it. Sit. Sit. Sit down. Bit more dark down in here. Sorry for this disturbed class. Wasn't intended. Anyway, that's life. Stuff happens. We still have a snake, so that's no fun. Rightio. Beautiful. I like the dark. See how the dark just creates the drama, just makes it more interesting. And I'm going to dab it in gently because some spots I want it to be slightly not quite as dark, but when you get to that point, you just want to dab it softly. Don't blend. Blend makes mud. Sometimes you want mud and it's not a bad thing, but not today. Okay, tip off my dust. Pretty happy with my little bird. He looks good. And I can, have I got a pencil somewhere? Where did I put it? There it is. Sign it. Don't forget to put your name on. Gorgeous. Very nice. So you could potentially keep playing with the background if you wanted to. I'm just going to put a bit more of a point on that beak. I lost the end of it because it does come over the top of that bottom beak a bit more, like that. Okay, and the line on here. So this is where your white charcoal pencils are really helpful because you can just get those subtle little marks on with a sharp pencil. Cool. All right, now just get a photo of that with my scissors. And I'll come back to everyone who's still here. If you've watched this on a video, thank you for coming. As I said, sorry about all the drama with the snake. And I hope you enjoyed doing this little one. It was really fun, I thought, anyway. So catch up with you next time, and I'll stop recording now. When I find the button. There it is.